Thank you for watching. We're here with Christine Trujillo. She's from District 25, and we were talking about education and all the stuff related to education. A few things we brought up. Let's go into the early childhood. I want to bring that up again because we were talking on that. Early childhood has a lot to do with economics. Right. This is my opinion, and you can tell me as an educator. It has to start at birth. Before the kids are even born. They have to talk to the parents and stuff. Do you think we have enough funds to even spend? I know the current governor cut back a little bit on I'm not sure if the early childhood or what, she cut back a little bit, scaled back on it a little bit. Do you think that as far as dealing with the parents and parental issues before the kids are even born, do you think that is a necessity?
It's absolutely a necessity.
It'll be a right focus area, though. If we said, okay, let's talk to the individuals that are about to have families and stuff.
Absolutely. I sponsored a parent advocacy bill in the legislature, and it went through all the right committees, and by sheer luck, I got the funding. Unfortunately, it wasn't vetoed, but there was a piece of language that was vetoed that took my money away, and to go to APS to help APS initially, because it was a pilot program, and it went back to the public education department to do whatever they wished with. And that was unfortunate, because the goal was to try to engage families with their kids and how to empower them to feel good about working with the school system, how to help their kids, all of those issues. That's gone. But the other issue that's tied to that is the fact that for years and years and years, we've been pushing for funding for early childhood education. And I do believe all the studies show that you need to engage the parent at birth. And what is happening here is that we have $20 billion in the permanent school fund, and it's sitting there creating all this interest, but we can't tap it because there's a certain entity in the LFC that is saying, no, that's for a rainy day. Well, you know,
it's a rainy day fund, they call it. They don't want you to tap into it now.
And it's unfortunate because, you know, and the people who made the fund, who created the fund years and years ago said, it's for future generations. Well, we are future generations, and our kids are suffering. I have always believed that we do not fund public education appropriately or adequately. Studies have proven that we don't fund it appropriately or adequately. If we've got a small percentage out of that fund to help with early childhood education.
What would you invest out of that?
What would I invest? You know,
to start off, we say for the few school districts. If you start with certain key districts.
Well,
that you felt that it was.
In my opinion, first of all, I think every district, all the 89 school districts and the charter schools are public schools.
Correct.
So we have our funding formula states that we must fund all the schools equally under the state
You don't think it's
guarantee.
Specific
No.
districts that require specific?
I think they all are individual districts, but I think the way that they all should be funded should be equitable. Otherwise, what'll happen will be the disequalization of funding for public schools the way it happened years ago. But this issue with early childhood education, the needs are great not just in Albuquerque and Santa Fe and Las Cruces, the biggest cities. The needs are even greater in rural communities because they don't have the ability to tap huge resources the way, you know, urban school districts have. And so the early childhood programs are critical. Right now, there was a conference that was held called Kids Count. And the data coming from that conference is showing that it isn't just the issue of education or the lack of education, it's the issue of health and poverty and all of the things.
There's a multitude of issues there.
Right, and that impacts teaching and learning. A child can't go into a classroom and think appropriately if their stomach is grumbling. And I've seen it. I taught 21 years, and I know for a fact
it's
that
very
you have
difficult,
to.
yeah. I remember when my kids were first going, when I was about to put my kids in school, it was extremely intimidating. I remember first going to the school, and talking to some teachers and stuff. And I thought it was pretty intimidating. So parents, I think, on a general basis, they are kind of intimidated at first, but then you have to find some ways to put them at ease.
Right.
Because they're the real backbone, whether the kid studies properly or not.
Absolutely.
And I remember being very intimidated because I was like, wow, I have to send my kid here. My daughter was very young, and when my son would start going there, it took a little bit of a, getting used to before we were kind of ready to go. Going into the later years, I noticed it got a little easier, but it was still not that easy. What is your opinion on the high school dropouts? I know there is a breakdown there, everybody agrees there's a substantial breakdown there because we have a huge dropout rate. And it's not only in specific districts, it's pretty much all across the board.
That's correct.
Am I right?
That's correct.
That's in your finding too, I think you
Yes.
can see that. How do we stop that?
Well, I think that we need to address the dropout system early in 6th grade, 5th grade, and mid school.
What do we tell
them? Because you start tracking the kids' deficiencies, right? The dilemma that has occurred is that because we keep getting that pendulum, that I spoke about earlier, every year somebody has this new silver bullet to save public education, that we have inconsistent data and we have no way of tracking. We have teachers who are doing a gazillion things and depend on one school counselor for every 500 kids to try to see if they can help kids determine what their future is going to be like, but they're dealing with other issues as well, and so that distracts from
financial and
everything. And I think we just need smaller class sizes. We need more support and respect.
What are the class sizes now? I know I've been out of school for a long. Well,
there are the class sizes depending in high school. You can have
30, 35, 40?
More, 45. I can have a culinary arts teacher with 40 kids sharing, all the stoves and everything else, and they're expected to start and complete a program in that short amount of time. You have teachers in math and science classes, depending on the school you're at, that are overloaded, and because there are waivers that are allowed, some school districts take advantage of the waiver, and a teacher can have a mass of students in a very short amount of time to try to teach them. So
talking to them at 6th or 7th grade, or right about that time, you think you'll be able to ascertain whether they will drop out or not?
Yes, absolutely, because at that point in time, studies even show that you can.
So there is some studies done showing that if you talk to them at that, you can tell whether this kid's going to drop out or not.
Absolutely, and for example, let me give you a program that really is working well is New Mexico Mesa.
Correct.
And what New Mexico Mesa has done is because they recognize that those were areas in which we had some real at-risk students. They went in with the support systems, and clearly they don't have enough money and they can't be everywhere, but they were able to go into certain at-risk schools and help address the needs for math and science education and engineering in those classes where kids needed more stimulation or more exposure to those kinds of processes and subject matter that they would normally not have had. There really is a poverty divide between the schools in the state of New Mexico, and you have real high highs and real low lows. And look at Los Alamos and Española, for example, or Mora. You have the highest performing district, and not the highest performing, but a high economic district and a low economic district, 30 miles apart.
And that is something that when you look at that, it's pretty unusual, the difference between the two. Let me take a break. I'll come back and we'll talk some more, okay? We'll take a short break. We'll be right back.